just to kind of give a recap of what we're doing today. This is going to be the Ultimate Attachment Guide 2.0, going over all of the attachment changes. So muzzles, grips, magazines, stocks, some of the scopes. I already have a ultimate scope guide, so I'm not going to go into every scope, but I'll go over some of the important stuff you need to know about the scopes. And then of course we'll touch on the other weapons, SMGs, snipers, shotguns, that kind of thing. So everything you need to know. And then hopefully by the end of this this guide, we are able to kind of determine what's the best attachments for you, because I don't think the answer is going to be so cut and dry where it's one attachment for everybody. I think it's going to depend on the situation, depend on your gameplay style, and what weapons you use. So first we've got to get a baseline. So we're going to go M4, no attachments, and crouching. We're going to do all the sprays that are going to be crouching because that's the most realistic way you should always be shooting in PUBG. If you stand up, you have higher recoil. If you prone, you have way less recoil, but it's not that common where you can always go prone, but you can almost always go crouch, okay? Now, one general thing you need to know about PUBG's weapon recoil patterns is that this game does have random weapon recoil patterns. So if I shoot this gun 5 times in a row in an exact same spot, the recoil will not always be the same, whatever the pattern is. Sometimes it'll be up and down, sometimes it'll go right, sometimes it'll go left, sometimes it'll swiggly. So that's why we're doing 4 or 5 different spray tests with each attachment, so that we can get some kind of consistency and basically get an average look at what the recoil will be like. So we'll start with the baseline. I'm going to go M4. I'm crouched at the little podium, and I'm going to try to do my best to aim at like the same spot every time. So I'll pick like this little kind of white thing. I'll aim there and just let it go from there. So I'm not going to pull down at all on the mouse. I'm just going to let the recoil kind of go where it goes. And that's actually pretty damn consistent considering there's no attachments made or anything. So now with that baseline established, we can take a look at some of the different muzzle attachments you can equip to the M4 and see how that's going to affect your recoil. Now starting off with the flash hider, this one's going to give you a flat 10% reduction in your horizontal and vertical recoil, in addition to reducing the muzzle flash from your weapon, making it a little bit harder for an enemy to see where you're shooting from. The suppressor does not give you any vertical or horizontal recoil control, but it does give you plus 5% on your hip fire accuracy, which is really going to benefit pistols and SMGs, which we'll touch on later. And the suppressor also completely removes your muzzle flash and really reduces your sound of your weapon. And I have a fun demonstration to show you at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around for that. Next up is the compensator, which gives you 10% in your horizontal and 15% in your vertical recoil control, making this the clear winner for the best recoil control of any weapon attachment. But you do lose the sound suppression or flash reduction from the other 2 attachments. And last but not least is the muzzle brake, which is the latest attachment for assault rifles, and this did just get a nerf, so it now only gives you 8% horizontal and 8% vertical recoil control, but it does give you 35% in screen shake reduction, which is going to be pretty massive for full auto spray weapons, and we'll do a couple of demonstrations later on. Now comparing all the attachments together for the M4, we can clearly see that the suppressor isn't going to give you any reduction in your recoil as we expected it, and the flash hider is going to give you a little bit of reduction, nothing crazy, but it is nice to have. And although of course the compensator is going to have better recoil reduction than the muzzle brake, I think the muzzle brake is still going to be very useful in certain situations depending on what kind of weapon and attachment you're using. For example, when PUBG recently removed the AUG out of the crates and into the world spawn, they artificially increased the screen shake on that weapon to give it a nerf and a perceived recoil increase. So using a muzzle brake on a weapon like the AUG is going to further reduce that artificial screen shake, making that weapon easier to control. In addition, whenever you attach a larger scope to a weapon, the screen shake is going to increase as that scope gets bigger as well. So if you're using a 3x or a 4x for your sprays on your assault rifle, the muzzle brake again will help reduce that artificial screen shake. Now in the interest of time, I'm not going to repeat the same steps for the SMG and the DMR since the results are pretty much the same. There are only 2 exceptions. For the SMGs, the compensator will actually reduce recoil by 20% for horizontal and 25% for vertical. So making these SMGs really accurate and pretty much like a laser beam if you have the compensator on it. However, because SMGs already have reduced recoil, In some cases, the suppressor is actually the more beneficial attachment, especially considering the increased hipfire accuracy you can get, which I'll show off here in just a minute. And for the DMRs, the story is pretty much the same. The rest of the attachments are equal with the exception of the compensator. The compensator for a sniper rifle gives you 20% horizontal and 20% vertical, as compared to the compensator for the assault rifle is 10% horizontal and 15% vertical. So that means if you are going to be using a DMR and you have a compensator for an assault rifle, you still should be looking out for a compensator for a DMR or sniper, because it will give you increased stats. For the shotguns, all we have is two, right? We have the choke and the duckbill. The choke is going to reduce your pellet spread by 13%. So the idea of a choke is to get your pellets to be closer together. So if you're shooting here, that's a no choke. And then one choke is going to be here. So the pellets themselves are a little bit tighter together. And the duckbill is for vertical pellet spread. Back in the day, before the shotguns got nerfed, you could use these pretty effectively at like 30 meters away from an enemy, which 30 meters is a good distance. Like we're here, this would be about 30 meters or so to that shed. You can't really do that anymore because of the damage nerf to the shotgun pellets. And so before, I would have argued, yeah, you want the choke because you're going to be using the shotgun around longer distances. I say long, like, you know, close to medium range. But now, since the shotguns are so much less effective, you're really only going to be using these in close quarters combat, or you should be only using these in close quarters combat. And where the choke falls apart is like in these kind of situations when you're going to be peeking around corners. If I shoot this choke, look at how many bullets hit there versus hit the character. So if I do it again, look at how many bullets hit there and how many hit the character. But if you get a duckbill, look at how many more hit the actual character and don't hit the wall. Because that duckbill is making your bullet spread go vertical up and down. So it's much better for clearing corners, coming around edges. My game is literally about to take a poop on itself. So that's why I think currently the duckbill honestly is the go-to for the pump. Now, I think what a lot of people really want to see are the grips. So we're going to drop that shotgun in the trash. Okay, so same thing. So we have our baseline here with no attachments on the M4. So now we're going to follow that same trend, but now we're going to add one attachment to it. So we'll start with the vert grip. Now the vert grip did get nerfed recently. So now this thing only gives you plus 15 vertical recoil control. I think vert used to be everyone's go-to. I think now if you took a poll, most people would say the half grip is their go-to, but I am really curious about this angle grip, and I'll show you why in a second. So the half grip is going to give you plus 8 horizontal and vertical. So it gives you 2% less horizontal and vertical than the vert grip, but you also get less 10% sway control when breathing. And then you get recoil plus 10 recoil recovery after single shot. So the sway control when breathing means that when you're ADS'd and you're not holding your breath, watch how my weapon moves up and down ever so slightly. So you see it moving? I'm not touching anything. I'm not holding my breath, because if you hold shift and you hold your breath, he's going to steady out the weapon. He's not going to sway this weapon as much. So this says minus 10% sway control when breathing. So that means if I took it off, the weapon would move less without having the attachment on. And now if you add that attachment, the weapon's going to move a bit more drastically when it does move. You see it kind of moves a bit more vertical, a bit more left and right sway. And now obviously this doesn't really matter for our AR, right? But maybe you put this on your DMR, or maybe you have a big scope on the gun and it's going to accentuate that weapon sway when you have a larger scope on it. So this is, again, just to give you a baseline of what the attachment does, and then we can build on it from there, okay? All right, so again, vertical grip only gives you plus 15 vertical recoil. Half grip gives you almost half, unironically, 8% vertical recoil, but it also gives you 8% horizontal, which the vert grip did not do. You lose weapon sway control, which again, I don't think honestly matters at all. And then, at least for assault rifles, and then you're going to get plus 10% recoil recovery after a single shot. And again, I don't think this really matters here in these use cases, because when are you really going to be doing this with your AR? Not really. You're usually going to be spraying your AR, which that stat, recoil recovery after single shot, is really only talking about here. How long does it take the weapon to come to its reset position after each shot, okay? So these last two stats, I don't think matter at all. The only thing you're really getting is horizontal and vertical recoil control from the half grip. But here's what I really want to see. So now let's move on to the angle grip. Now take a look at this. The angle grip got a buff recently. It now gives you 25% horizontal recoil control. It doesn't give you any vertical recoil control. You still get the minus 10% in the sway control when you're breathing, and then you get plus 10% ADS speed. This is the first attachment we've seen that's given you this extra benefit here. So going back to the half grip again, this one has horizontal and vertical, only 8%. You still get the minus 10% sway, and you get the plus 10% recoil recovery, which again, I don't think is benefiting anybody with a spray weapon, okay? The angle grip, you don't get any vertical control. So it is going to be harder you have to pull down more for the vertical fire, but 25% horizontal. We should be able to very obviously see that here in this demonstration. And then the plus 10 ADS speed is going to come into play when we start talking about scope. So looking at ADS speed, and again, every time you put a scope, it accentuates this. We'll go over scopes in a minute. But so your ADS speed is how long it takes to aim down your sight and be ready to shoot your gun. Add this scope on, or this attachment, and now you're a little bit faster. You're able to aim down sight a little bit faster with the angle grip. And so why I think this might be an interesting grip to start testing with is because most people are okay with pulling their mouse up and down. It's really when the scope starts to kind of bounce left and right that people get caught out. You can go into your settings and you can go to your controls and go to your vertical sensitivity multiplier, and you can bump this number up. The higher you bump that number up, the less you have to pull down vertically on your mouse to compensate for the recoil. So theoretically, you could bump this number up a couple ticks, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, whatever, and use an angle grip and get the benefit of that horizontal recoil and not have to work that much harder to be able to control the vertical pull down. So something to consider. Now moving on to the thumb grip. The thumb grip, I'd like to say, is probably the highest tiered grip right now because it has the most risk reward. The thumb grip gives you plus 10 vertical, plus 20 sway control when you're breathing. So that's when you're not holding your breath, just doing this. It's going to be way more steady. Then you've got plus 10% recoil recovery after single shot. Again, not really beneficial. Those two stats, not really beneficial, in my opinion, for assault rifles. And it gives you plus 40% ADS speed. So that's a significant increase on how fast you can aim down your sight with your weapon. So you can really get snappy in and out to return fire or acquire your target. This is a really great grip. You do not get any horizontal control though with this one. You get 0 horizontal control. So vert grip only gives you plus 15 vertical recoil. The thumb grip, you get plus 10. So you sacrifice 5%, but look at all the other stuff you get. Sway control, recoil, ADS speed. So there's, in my opinion, no real need to ever use a vert grip when you have the thumb grip. So just have that little tidbit, that little nugget. So now let's move on to the lightweight grip. And again, this one is going to be really a grip designed for single fire usage. So it really is like an SKS in a mutant top tier grip. You can use it for other weapons, and there are some small benefits that you can eke out of it if you use it on your assault rifle, but overall not really going to be the go-to. This one has sway control when breathing. So that's when you're ADS'd and you're not holding your breath. That weapon is going to move ever so slightly. It'll move way less versus you not having the attachment. Then you have plus 10% muzzle rise control. So how much is that muzzle going to naturally move upward? So this has plus 10% control on that. 20% recoil recovery after single shot. So it's after you... It's got recoil recovery there. So it's going to be able to reset its ADS or its sight faster. And then it has plus 30% initial shot recoil control. This is the only attachment with this option, and this is why it's so important to use this when you have a mutant or an SKS, because you're basically your shot recoil, your shot distance between your first two shots is so small, it's going to allow you to get very fast double headshots on your enemy, and you can take advantage of this even during a full spray. All right, so looking at the results from left to right, we can clearly see the angle grip has the worst vertical recoil, as we would expect, since it doesn't give you any reduction there, but it does have the cleanest horizontal pattern of any of the grips. And like I said earlier, if you're able to compensate with a better pull down control, or if you increase your vertical sensitivity multiplier, this could be a really cheeky grip when combining that plus 10 ADS speed and the 25% horizontal sway. The half grip unironically ends up being about middle of the pack. It's got a pretty decent horizontal and vertical recoil pattern, and if you look at the first 10 or 15 bullets, they're actually really tightly wound together, which is going to give you pretty consistent sprays no matter which weapon you're choosing it with. And maybe not so surprisingly, the thumb grip actually outperformed the vert grip in some of the vertical recoil patterns, and you are going to be getting that extra 40% ADS speed, recoil recovery, and sway control. So again, I don't think there's any real reason in this current meta to use a vert grip when you find a thumb grip in its place. And last but not least, the lightweight grip certainly can be used in a full auto weapon, and you will get a few of those benefits that we mentioned before, like the initial shot recoil recovery, muzzle rise control, etc. But you can clearly see that after you start to get into your spray, the horizontal and vertical is going to get out of control. And a couple of the nuances in terms of the grip choices is really going to depend on which weapon you're choosing it with. For instance, some weapons can't accept all the attachments, like the Vector can't even accept a thumb grip. So you maybe have to choose between a vert and a half grip for that weapon. And in that case, maybe the vert grip is better, since the Vector is known to have a very high amount of vertical recoil. Last is the laser sight. Now, laser sight honestly is really going to be better for SMGs. So this is going to give you plus 30% hipfire accuracy. And then I need to turn this back on to really show you. So look at the outer edge of my right crosshair. I have it right at the edge of this little block right here. You see that? The inner edge of that line. Now watch what happens when I put on the laser sight. Now look at the inner edge of that horizontal line. It's been tightened in automatically for me. So your hip fire sprays are going to be 30% more accurate. Then you can add to that accuracy by doing the aim keybind, the AIM keybind. And if I do that, take it back off here. So no attachment, and then I do aim, I get that, right? So no attachment, AIM, no attachment, AIM. Then if I put it on, then I do AIM. Look at even how much tighter the crosshairs get. So that's showing you that you now have basically the best hipfire accuracy potential. The only way you could get increased from here is to combine that with a suppressor, which is going to give you another plus 5 hipfire accuracy. So that's how you really utilize those combinations: hipfire accuracy, hipfire accuracy. Okay, so these are really meant for SMGs, because SMGs, if you remember, got a big buff recently, and the SMGs are going to be ideal for close quarters combat, a run and gun spray. So if you have an SMG, you're going to be able to really take advantage of that lack of your movement penalty by having laser sight and even a suppressor to really get extremely accurate recoil control at close quarters without ever even having to ADS your weapon. So you can really take advantage of quick peeks and never have to worry about scoping in, which is going to reduce your on target time. Now we're going on to magazines. Magazines is going to be really, really simple. I'm not going to do all the magazines. It's a literally rinse and repeat for each of the attachments or each of the weapon types. You'll get the idea here. And so there's 3 types for every weapon, essentially. You have a quick draw magazine, you have an extended magazine, and then you have an extended quick draw magazine. And the stats are exactly the same for all of them. Okay, so for assault rifles, the M4 comes with 30 rounds of ammunition with no magazine attached. Okay, so 30 rounds, standard magazine. And then if you do a quick draw magazine, you still get 30 rounds, but you also get a plus 60% reload speed. So I forget the exact reload time. I've done a video on this in the past. I want to say it's like a standard 5-second reload speed. And so you're going to get 60% reduction in that reload speed. So no magazine, and then quick draw. So way faster. 60% is huge. Way faster reload speed. And then also kind of on that note, fun fact with reload, and not a lot of people know this. If you reload your weapon with 1 bullet or more in this counter, he does not have to rechamber the weapon to be ready to fire again. So if you were to drain your magazine to 0, if I reload now, even though I have the quick draw mag, it'll still reload 60% faster, but I am going to have to rechamber around before I can shoot again. You hear that last little click at the end? That was when he's rechambering the round to be able to fire, versus if you did it with 1 bullet in the magazine, it does not have to rechamber that round. So you're a little bit faster being able to shoot at your next target. Then you have an extended magazine, which gives you no reduction in your reload speed, but you do get extra bullets. So this one gives you what, plus 12 or something like that? Let's see. Yeah, plus 12 in the bullet capacities. You go from 30 to 40, but you get no reduction in the reload speed. The extended quick draw, if we take that one off and put that one on, hit reload. So instead of 42, we only have 40 with this one, but you do get a plus 15% reload speed. So nowhere near as significant as the plus 60 from a quick draw magazine. That's plus 15. And then plus 60. Way, way, way faster. It's the same for SMGs, same for snipers, DMRs, etc. DMRs can accept these magazines or these magazines. These top 3, they only can be used on like M24 and the AWM, like this actual sniper rifles. Obviously, they can be used on DMRs too, but these can be used on ARs and DMRs, and there's no penalty for having one or the other, okay? So why would you use a different magazine? Well, basically, in my opinion, if you're on squads, you almost always want more bullets in the magazine, because 30 sometimes just isn't enough, and 40 to 42 may not make that big of a difference, but 30 to 40 can be the difference of you being able to kill one enemy and then kill another enemy without having to reload in the middle of that fight. Some people might say they rather the quicker reload time because they can shoot, reload, and be ready for the next enemy just as fast. Maybe. That's obviously up to you. I typically prefer just going with an extended quick draw on most of my weapons. However, the one time when I would say maybe not so much is sometimes on a DMR or a VSS, having those couple of extra bullets that you get with a regular extended magazine can sometimes get you that kill that you need before you have to reload. You know, even if it's only 2 bullets, sometimes 2 more bullets in your DMR shot or 2 more bullets in your VSS shot is the difference between you getting that kill or that target, you know, running behind cover at the last second as you have to reload. So something to kind of keep in mind when you're making your tactical decision about what magazine you want. Now for SMGs, it does get a little interesting because SMGs are, you know, close quarters combat, and depending on your playstyle, you know, if you're doing all close quarters, you might go laser sight, suppressor. You might want to have the quick draw magazine because you're just running around hip firing, not giving a dang about nothing, and you're just freaking sprinting, shooting. You're getting in and out of your fights. It's going to depend on your playstyle, you know? For me, I like the extra ammo on most occasions, but now you know the difference. So for stocks now, the main 2 that you're going to run across are the tactical stock and the newer heavy stock. The tactical stock is going to give you plus 10% sway when breathing, plus 10% muzzle rise control, plus 10% ADS speed, and plus 5% recoil after single shot. So every stat that I just read there screams out single tap fire. So this tactical stock even though you can use it on an MP5K or an M4, or an M249, you really only want to use this attachment on mutants and M16s when you're single tap firing. So that's what you're going to use that one for. The heavy stock is going to give you plus 10 vertical, plus 10 horizontal. It does give you minus 10% ADS speed, so that is a hit, but it also gives you the plus 5 recoil after shot and minus 10% hip fire accuracy. So if you are going to be running and gunning hip firing, maybe you don't want this attachment. That might be the only other opportunity where you wouldn't put it on like the MP5K. But aside from that, this is going to give you your full auto best recoil control. The folding stock, honestly, just very self-explanatory. There's only one gun that even uses it at this point. It's the Micro Uzi. The Micro Uzi gets a 20% vertical recoil control and plus 15% recoil recovery after single shot. So to show you real quick what the difference is there, we're not going to do a full test here because honestly, I don't think it's necessary, but here we go. So that's no attachment. And that's with the stock. So pretty clear. You obviously want to pick up one of these Uzi stocks when you can. Bullet loops and cheek pads. So a lot of people ask the question, CDome, should I use a cheek pad or bullet loops? It does depend, number one, on your preference. But for a bolt action rifle, like a Kar 98, which can take both, it can take a cheek pad or bullet loops. You have to look at the stats here. So bullet loop, all it does is give you 30% reload speed increase. So that's the only stat you're going to get from this weapon. So if I reload, okay, and then if I reload with bullet loops, 30% faster, right? Self-explanatory. I tend to prefer bullet loops on my Kar 98, but if you look at the stats for a cheek pad, this does give you vertical recoil control, sway control while breathing, and muzzle rise control. 2 of those 3 stats only apply to guns that you're going to be shooting very fast, rapidly, like an SKS, SLR, your DMR weapons. For bolt action rifles, vertical recoil doesn't mean anything. Muzzle rise control doesn't mean anything because you have to ADS after every shot anyway. So the only benefit you're getting from a cheek pad is the sway control while you're breathing, which is, again, when you're just doing this and you're not holding your breath. As soon as you hold your breath, your character is no longer breathing and no longer has that sway added to the gun, okay? So the cheek pad does benefit you a little bit in that one instance. So if you have a scope, so 8x, and we have no cheek pad, right? So I'm just going to hold the mouse steady and watch what the scope does. So it's naturally moving up and down. I'm not holding my breath or nothing. And then if I hold my breath, watch, and the scope is dead steady. Doesn't move at all. But now if I add a cheek pad, I'm going to let my guy catch his breath. Again, not moving my mouse at all. And now the crosshairs are going to move way less than no attachment. They still move, but way, way, way less. And so that's why it is a nice attachment. But I think it honestly isn't that big of a deal on a bolt. I think it's much more usable and noticeable on something like an SKS, because on the SKS, you are going to get the sway control while breathing. So this is going to help you steady in finding your shot, right? But the real benefit is going to come in from the vertical recoil control and the muzzle rise control. So if I don't put this attachment on, then I do put the attachment on, you can see those shots are closer together to one another than here. So you got less vertical recoil to worry about. And you also are going to have the sway control while breathing, and the muzzle rise is going to be less. So use a bolt. I tend to go bullet loops. There's nothing wrong with going cheek pad. But then obviously when you have a DMR, you always want a cheek pad. A cheek pad is a very important attachment for your SLR, your SKS, any of those bolts. But like an M24 sniper, If you didn't find a cheek pad, I wouldn't consider that to be a big problem. Now let's go on to scope. So this is another fun one here. So for this little demonstration, what I want to really call out to is earlier in the video, I was talking about how some of those attachments, when they give you like sway control or initial shot reduction or ADS speed, those things are all accentuated depending on what type of scope you have on your gun. And in PUBG, the larger that your scope is, the more accentuated these stats are. Things like ADS speed, how quickly you can aim down your scope. Things like weapon sway, how much your scope moves. Things like recoil control, all that kind of stuff really depends on what type of scope you have. So to showcase that, we'll start with no attachments, right? And here's just a red dot. So ADSing on my target with a red dot. Now I'll go to 4x. Now you see it takes a little bit longer to aim down sight on the 4x. And now I'll go to an 8x. Look how long it takes to scope in on your target. There's a lot of time wasted in aiming down sight to acquire your target. So that's where knowing what attachments you want to use can come really into handy. So the lightweight grip is what I always say is this is the best attachment to use on single shot fire weapons because of all the things we already covered, right? It gives you the best recoil control for initial shot after. It gives you the best muzzle rise, all those things. But it is missing out on a very important stat, and that is your increased ADS speed. So for those high tier players, like I called out earlier, the thumb grip is very high risk, high reward. So thumb grip is not as good as a lightweight in terms of the recoil control for a single tap fire gun like an SKS or a Mutant. But take a look at how much faster you're able to get on target with a thumb grip in an 8x. See how snappy it is? You're aiming down sight almost instantly on your target, and even faster with a 4x. And then the smaller scope you go, obviously, the quicker it's going to get. So every scope has a natural ADS speed penalty. The bigger the scope, the bigger the penalty. But this thumb grip gives you that 40% reduction, which is a huge reduction in acquiring your target. And, you know, when you're taking your time and you're in your cover, does it matter how long it takes the ADS? Well, no, it probably doesn't. But let's say you're on the move and you see an enemy, you have to snap to your enemy. Having that thumb grip in that scenario could mean the difference. So that's why you have to think tactically about what your play style is, where the circle might be ending. Are you going to be in a city ending where there's a lot of close range engagements where you don't have a lot of time just to stay scoped in and kind of scan your area? You know, if you're in a big hilltop, a mountain range, yeah, maybe you can just scope in and you can stay scoped in and just kind of scan around. But maybe you're not, and you need that snappy potential of being able to go in and out, in and out, in and out. So that's one thing to really consider when looking at your attachments, depending on what scope you have. The other thing I wanted to showcase is we talked earlier about, depending on what scope you have, everything is accentuated with PUBG. And one of those things is also recoil. So the recoil pattern of your gun does not change with your scope. So if I have no scope, and I go, then I put an 8x. The recoil pattern does not change of those two shots. If you do it obviously exactly the same speed, I got human error in there, but the recoil is not going to change. What is going to change is the perceived recoil and the weapon bounce with the larger scope that you have. So you have a red dot, the little bounce, you have a 4x, bigger bounce, you have an 8x zoomed all the way in, an even bigger bounce. That's where those attachments are really going to help reduce and control that recoil, the bounce, the screen shake, all those sorts of things. So like this compensator gives you vertical 20% recoil control, which has nothing to do with screen shake. It's just talking about how much your gun's going to be jumping up shot after shot, shot after shot, right? But if you put on the brand new attachment, the muzzle brake, Just fully zoomed in on 8x. Look at how much smoother your screen is. Compensator. Muzzle brake. So again, I'm not saying one is the clear winner of the other, but this is just to help educate you based on your playstyle. That might be something you want to consider, which one you prefer to use. Do you want that perceived less recoil or not? Also, maybe you're running a 4x, and a lot of people like 4x's over 8x's, or they like 6x's over 8x's. And a 6x or 4x is going to have less screen shake, less perceived recoil than an 8x is. So maybe you don't need the muzzle brake, but maybe you think to yourself, okay, if I find an 8x, then I want to find a muzzle brake. You can kind of make those tactical decisions. Maybe if I get an 8x, I would rather the thumb grip so that I can ADS in and out faster than if I had the lightweight grip, even though the lightweight grip is actually better in terms of the weapon usage, you know? So those are tactical decisions that you can make once you understand the differences between all those attachments. Now, demonstration time. So there's a couple things. LMG, M249. Callie's not happy. Something is here. Hey, Callie, I'm trying to record a video. Look at this big Bertha with the stat tracking skin. Whew. All of the MGs, so the LMGs, have a bipod. Other weapons like the Mark 12 DMR and the Mark 14 DMR also have bipods. So any weapon that has a bipod, when you go prone, it automatically deploys a bipod and your accuracy becomes like a laser beam. So check this one out. I mean, you get the picture. So whenever you can go prone with an LMG, definitely take advantage of that bipod, because it is an extreme attachment that allows you to laser beam people even at long range. If you were to slap a 4x, which you should be able to put an 8x on these, but you can't. The biggest you can do is a 6. You do a 4x and it just absolutely beams going prone, versus when you're crouched and you're having to fight that recoil. It's a bit, even when you're prepared to do it, it's a bit hard. You can see how many shots I missed there. Other one was the scoped ADS speed. I showed you guys that. So the bigger the scope that you use, the longer it takes to aim down sight. And that applies to every gun, not just a sniper rifle. So if you're with an assault rifle or an LMG, you know, having a red dot is going to be way faster than going to a 4x. You have that slow scope in time. That's why some people still do like to use the very cheeky canted sight, because you can swap to that, and that gives you the ADS speed of a red dot. And if you need to, you swap over, and then you can take your big scope down to Pound Town. Now, a little need to know fact about the canted sight. There used to be a bug that allowed you, when you had a 6x or an 8x, it allowed you to zoom in and zoom out of your 6x and 8x instantaneously. It no longer has that feature. So that bug was fixed. Now it's the same zoom in and zoom out speed, whether or not you have the canted sight. So don't have the canted sight equipped just for the heck of it. It doesn't do anything to your scope. It doesn't help you like it used to at all. That was a bug. They fixed it. I wish they wouldn't have. I thought it was actually kind of a cheeky little thing. All right, last thing that I want to show you guys today is a really fun thing I did, the last attachment guide. All right, now our goal is going to be, can we find the shooter? Okay, that's the goal. Can you find the shooter? This demonstration is going to show you that even though a compensator or muzzle brake is better for recoil, is it the better attachment to use? Because sometimes the advantage that you have is your element of surprise and how long it takes for the enemy to acquire your position. And sometimes that suppressor gives you exactly that element of surprise. Here is a very real world scenario, okay? We're gonna go suppressor first, then I'll go to my flash hider, and then I will go to my other one. So the enemy is somewhere in front of us. Let's see if you can find the enemy before they would have otherwise killed you, and tell me what attachment you want to use from now on. All right, here we go. I know where he is, and I don't even see him right now. Do it again with the suppressor. Okay, now go to flash hider, which reduces your muzzle flash a little bit, but not all the way. And you're much louder now. Can you see the enemy yet? I literally can't see the enemy, and I know where to look. All right, now we'll go to a compensator. Can we see him now? Let's see. Can you guys see? So now that you know where to look, right here, this whole time. And I'll go back, right? So we'll go suppressor. Literally can't see him. And I'm just crouched. I'm not even prone right now. But how long would that have taken you to acquire this target, right? And you go to a flash hider. So knowing where he is, can you see the flash hider still? Not really. I can kind of see a flash. If you zoom in, you can barely see a little barely see a little flash there. But then when you go to a compensator, you see the spark. Clear as day now, right? You can see that clear as day. And then the muzzle brake is here. I'll do this with one hand here. Is that muzzle brake actually less than the compensator? No, it's the same as compensator. So that was the last demonstration I wanted to put in there. Just a little test your wisdom on the different attachments, because again, everyone always says, you know, I want to go compensator, I want to go muzzle brake, which most of the times, yeah, that is the obvious choice. But if you're a solo player, I would argue a suppressor, especially for a single tap fire weapon, is actually much more beneficial in most scenarios. When you get to duos, it becomes less beneficial, because you got to consider if there's two people on that hill shooting at you, if one of them has a suppressor and the other doesn't, your position is going to be given up anyway. Or if there's a squad of people and you point that thing at the squad of people, if everyone in the squad doesn't have a suppressor, then your position's way more easily going to be given up. What a cool looking gun. The SKS is just such a cool gun. Can I actually take his SKS and give him the skin? Hold on, let's see. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the skin, yeah. Okay. Boom. Hands are fast. Night night. Alright guys, so that's it for the Ultimate Attachment Guide 2.0. Let me know your thoughts down below on what you thought of the video. Did you make any different gameplay changes based on anything you've seen? And is there anything different you'd like to see me cover in a future video? Sound off down below. I'll say this, after doing the testing for the video, I have been finding myself using the angle grip much more frequently, really utilizing that horizontal recoil control and increase in my vertical sense multiplier. That's been really nice. In addition, I have not touched the vert grip since I found out the data is pretty much negligent when compared to the thumb grip, so I'm curious if you guys are finding similar results down below. And last but not least, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to leave it a thumbs up, share it with a buddy, and get subscribed for more PUBG content. And if you want to support me, please consider using creator code CDome. That link will be down in the description or the pinned comment where you can log in, link your account, and PUBG will give me a commission anytime you buy anything in the store. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Peace.